What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Anime Fiction. I am back with another episode of What If Naruto was teleported to another world, part 13. And if you did enjoy this video, like this video for the next part. And if you're new to my channel and like my content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter the 15th of September X 779. The two old men were trudging up the hill in the snow. One of the vices of growing old like this. Your body has started playing against you in the long run. Asterisk snorts MOMG, she sure is a lively girl, isn't she? Said the man in the fur coat over his spaghetti suit as he worried about the temperature dropping. Make a mess of your makeup. You don't know half, the dwarf said as he tired of digging his stumpy limbs out of the deep snow. You just had to be a good boy and give Naruto the delivery request, right? And wasn't it you who asked me if I had a simple mission for him? If anything, it's your fault, Maki-chan. Guildmaster Blue Pegasus scolded his old comrade with a lipstick-covered pout. That doesn't mean you had to have one. And it just had to be a date with the Rubol Guild in the mountains, right? Makarov yelled at Bob as he jumped and flailed in the air before blowing something up and falling back into the snow. Ah, my back. As the little man scratched his aching back, he tried to reason with his young protege. Hey Urza, can you slow down for a minute? Bobby and I need a second, and he's gone. She deflated when she realized that the scarlet-haired girl had run so far that she was gone. Not even a speck in her eyes anymore. Bob helped her tired friend to her feet. Can you blame her for wanting to get there as fast as possible? Makarov sighed wearily. Yes. Your guys at Pegasus have done quite a lot to us, poor thing. No, I don't mean, it's actually true, but you know what I'm talking about. Bob sighed happily and placed a hand on her cheek, looking at her in admiration. Urza-chan must be really worried about what to do next. The armored redhead was heading towards the snowy mountain as a short break from work with her master. They had already left their blonde friend misbehaving to the point of request and traveled here to Viola to meet a certain person. At the moment, Urza was bouncing between emotions. She was still mad and at Naruto for stealing the S-class application and not telling her. She was anxious and nervous about what was going to happen in a minute. And most of all, she was still terrified of that rough-faced man from the Blue Pegasus Guild who had constantly complimented her on her perfume. Ugh. The feeling of him sniffing her hair and circling around her, winking at her, persisted. So when he saw the man he'd come so far for, he didn't know what to do next. Maybe she would chase him up and down the mountain as punishment for not telling her he was alive. Or maybe he would use the punishment methods he uses with Natsu and Gray to teach them a lesson? Whatever he did, he would know what to do the second he saw her. Finally reaching the end of the uphill path, the young wizard of fairy tale made his way towards an open field with a wooden house on the edge. Near the house, she could see a tall man in an overcoat, giving something to a large wyvern with a scar over his left eye before it roared and flew away. When the wind died down and the flapping of the great creature became a distant echo, Urza's eyes were completely glued to the man who had his back to her. He seemed to realize he was being watched and turned to see who it was. Rob felt his seared, wrinkled face widen in surprise as he saw the young woman standing a few feet away from him. She had grown quite a lot since he had seen her all those years ago, at least now she was 5 feet tall. Her once shoulder-length red hair was now long and braided for ease of movement. She was clad in simple armor that covered her chest and arms. He chuckled a little at her clothes. She would have caught a cold going up the mountains in that metal. He turned to face her fully. Wow. Look how much you've grown. Urza knew what she would do now. She knew it the moment she saw him. She held back the tears for as long as possible and gave her grandfather a big hug. The young man in the black cloak and hood was walking calmly along the dirt road in front of him. His boots pushed over the cobbles and gravel as the black sheath at his waist rocked slightly with each movement. His vibrant blue and brown eyes peered out from under his hood and watched the sun beat down on him in the surrounding forest. He bent over wearily, his arms dangling by his sides as he moaned. Ugh, it's too hot for this shit. She smacked her lips as her throat grew more and more dry. Naruto wasn't in the mood for all this bullshit waiting. He was getting enough punishment just that he had to take this job for his probation. First he just sighed and remembered that he really had no say in his punishment. If he had known that he was going to get so much crap after taking the job in S-class, he probably would have reconsidered the whole idea. First of all, he had to sit there for several hours while Makarov yelled at him and Urza kept hitting him on the head with a stick. They yelled at him for his stupidity, recklessness, immaturity, blah blah blah. Basically, it was her once-in-a-lifetime chance to hurl insults and joke at him without him retaliating. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. He subsequently received the main punishment. The principal, oh god, he was having flashbacks again. It was too much to remember even in the safety of his mind. The entire guild had witnessed this and it was safe to say that no one would be making their mistake anytime soon. Natsu, Luxus, heck, even Urza was too embarrassed to look him in the eye again. But Gigi didn't stop at public humiliation. No, he was then forced to go through a temporary probation where he was not allowed to accept any applications or jobs without someone with him to make sure he didn't make any more mistakes. And in the last month he had taken jobs with Natsu, Gray, Kana, Shadowgear, the Strauss brothers as a group and individually. Strangely, he was the one who had to keep Gildarts in line when they worked together. The idiot even had the balls to talk to him and laugh as he walked through the center of the city government building. Although most of the time he worked together with Urza. But it seemed like it was a completely different issue on its own. The armored wizard always seemed aloof when they began their probationary period. And it hasn't been that bad for the past few weeks, but it definitely wasn't the same as before I took the S-class job. She wasn't cruel or trying to teach him a lesson, he was just distant. I didn't know what to do about it. He wanted to approach her and ask what was wrong, but even he knew it was pretty stupid to ask a girl what was wrong when you were causing the problem. He even tried asking Gigi what to do, but he always ended up with the teacher scolding him for something called juvenile trouble. Naruto just shook his head and concentrated on the task at hand. This would be his chance to show Gigi that he was a responsible wizard and that he could go on his own mission again. All he had to do was follow Master Bob's personal request and he was clean. He had gone to Viola with Gigi and Urza to meet the Master of Disguise in their guild. The strange man had told him it was just a simple exchange of information with another guild deep in the forest on the other side of the mountain range. All he had to do was take the train, head to Bob's palace, exchange information with the other guild member and he would be good to go. It seemed simple at the time. Though no one seemed to tell the other wizard how simple and important this task was because he was 2 hours late. Naruto had grown impatient just waiting inside the big luxury building and now he was walking towards the big forest in front of the mansion. He wasn't the type to hold out that long and just sit there. If this wizard named Cait Shelter hadn't come for Naruto, then Naruto would have come for him. And teach him a little lesson in punctuality. Emphasis on punch. What the hell was a Cait anyway? Was he some kind of typo? What kind of legitimate guild would have misspelled their name like that on purpose? It was an honor only fairy tale was entitled to, damn it. Kya. The mustachioed boy stopped walking and looked towards a stretch of forest where he had heard the echo of the high-pitched scream. He dropped the train of thought completely and gripped the handle of the blade at his side. And without further questioning, he immediately hurried to where the birds were coming out of the trees. Hurry. Hurry. This way. A small, soft voice called to her friend as she meandered through the branches and trees. She was doing her best to dodge the blows of the leaping monkeys who hopped through the trees as if they were just wading through the water. He knew they shouldn't have volunteered for this master's request. They weren't ready yet. Another voice was heard as she tried to escape from the wolves that were chasing her through the forest. She was panting after running away from dangerous animals for the last mile and her legs were getting sluggish. She leapt forward when a wolf bit her and squealed as she tried to put more distance between herself and the predatory animals. Maybe Master Rubol was right, they were really too young to start accepting any kind of request. She stuck her foot under a stray root and tripped to the ground. Oh, Magna-san worked so hard on her new dress and ruined it. The girl tried to get up, but she realized that the wolves and monkeys had completely surrounded her. She panicked and started crawling backwards, but noticed her foot was still trapped under the root. She tried to pull it out, but she couldn't escape the rigid root of nature. The animals began approaching the frightened girl, causing her to flinch and cower, with tears in the sides of her eyes. Stop. A small winged cat flew between the girl and her animals, rearing its paws to prevent them from advancing. Don't go near her. Carla, run away. The animals did not heed her warning and continued to sneak up on the two. The girl and the cat trembled in fear that this might be their last moment. One of the wolves took the initiative and lunged forward, the girls closed their eyes and screamed a little. The leaping wolf found a fighting boot lodged in his ribs. He was kicked sideways with a scream as the black figure drew the sword strapped to his side. The cloaked man landed in front of the girls and looked at all the animals before him, his sword held out before him as an invitation to try and attack. Start. All the predators of the forests reduced the threatening tone that the man had been and they fled before he could teach them because he seemed so angry. The young woman and the cat rose to their feet while the black figure got up to all her height, which made him giant from her position on the ground. His black cloak billowed in the wind, giving him the appearance of some sort of messenger of death. He turned and looked at the girl and the cat, the only visible feature they could see were his eyes looking down at them. And finally, he may have been in a panic the whole ride, but his voice sounded pretty rough. Are you okay? The girls were horrified as the white cat comically snapped in place and the girl's mouth twitched. He leaned towards them, I said. Ah. The girl screamed at the top of her lungs in fear of him and unconsciously released a pulse of her magic to him. Naruto was nearly overwhelmed by the momentary storm that formed around the girl and her costume cat. He realized that falling out of nowhere dressed in black with his face completely covered was probably not the best way to introduce himself to the frightened girl. He pulled his hood down and motioned for the girl to stop. Whoa. Whoa. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to scare you. Look. I'm not a monster. He sniffed his nose and looked at the young man as he pointed at himself with a goofy smile. The girl saw that it wasn't some kind of monster as she calmed down and her magic stagnated again. Naruto sighed in relief and chuckled a little. He smiled and offered her his hand. Here, do you need help? The little girl who was probably no more than 7 or 8 looked at her hand and then back at him. She had shoulder-length dark blue hair and was wearing some kind of exotic dress with simple blue shoes with a pair of wings on the heels. She tried to take his hand. Stop right there. Naruto stopped any attempt to help the young woman and stood stiffly, not expecting the harsh tone of another young voice to command him so easily. He looked around in bewilderment as he tried to locate the source of the voice. Below. The older fairy tale wizard looked up to see a familiar white cat standing on its two hind legs and dressed in formal attire, raising a demanding paw at him. She was glaring at him and didn't seem in the mood to joke, her pink ribbon tail slowly fluttering behind her. You won't get any closer to Wendy until we know who you are. What are you doing here? What are your intentions? She screamed intently at the speechless man in front of her. Naruto was completely stunned as he got down on his knees and started poking the kitten on his cheeks. The kitten's eyebrows twitched violently as the girl stared at them with wide eyes. Oh. Can you talk like Happy? Strange. He withdrew her hands as the young cat showed his claws and began flailing them furiously. I'm not a toy and I'm definitely not happy. The kitten tried to lunge at the man, but the girl pulled him away. Carla, stop. He saved us, you don't have to attack him. The white cat seemed to struggle to escape the girl's firm embrace, but soon calmed down and fell back into her arms. He is a good person. Carla huffed and looked away, trying to ignore the existence of the older man in front of them. The blue-haired girl smiled at her friend before looking at the taller blonde man and regaining her shy composure. Hi. My name is Wendy Marvell. And this is my friend Carla. He turned his attention to the annoyed cat who was looking in another direction. Is it okay if we could know your name? I'm fine not knowing your name, thanks. Carla, behave yourself. The older boy couldn't help but laugh at her funny back and forth joke. It was like seeing what Natsu and Happy would have looked like if they were younger and girls. Happina and Natsuko. Hi, I'm Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Wendy. The girl smiled nervously and cocked her head. You are too small a cat thing. HMPH. Carla snorted at the newcomer. So, what are you two doing up here in the woods? Asked Naruto with a nod of his head. Wendy seemed to panic and shiver a little at the question asked. Oh. We. We are wizards of the Cait Shelter Guild. Carla said in a calm tone and with a serious look. This girl and I are on official business at the moment. And while we are grateful for your help in the above matter, we are awaiting the arrival of a fairy tale guild mage. So, if you would kindly return to your business, we would appreciate it. The white kitten seemed to wave him away with a wave of her hand. Carla, that was very rude of you. Why are you so angry right now? Wendy asked her friend in a whisper. There's no reason, I just want us not to get distracted when fairy tale's contact arrives. Did you say, Cait Shelter? The two feline-themed guild girls looked at the boy with a stunned look on their faces. Oh, yeah, we did, Wendy replies quickly. Naruto sighed and grabbed the sleeve of his right arm. He pulled it over his shoulder to reveal the black fairy tattoo on his bicep to the girl and the cat. I think you came to meet me. Wendy watched him wide-eyed as Carla's jaw was relaxed and her eyes were white. She pointed her paw at the teenager. You can't be a fairy tale wizard. They are a respected and famous legal guild that many aspire to follow and join. How can someone like you be a member? Naruto just sighed wearily as he looked to the side. You'd be surprised at the truth. He looked down at them and placed his hands on his hips. Okay, so you need to give me something to take to Master Bob? Oh. Wendy set Carla on the floor and rummaged in a small pocket of her dress. She pulled out a folded piece of paper and showed it to him. Oh, here. Naruto took the sheet of paper and gave her a grateful nod. Thank you. He tucked the paper into his pants and turned in the direction he'd come from. See you again, you two. Nice meeting you, Wendy. Hairy thing, not that much. Wendy greeted him as Carla hissed in annoyance as Naruto began to retreat towards the village in Blue Pegasus. Okay, now we just have to go home. Come on, Wendy. But Carla, it took more than a day to get here. Can we really go back to the guild alone? What about all the animals and creatures of the forest? Wendy asked, very nervous and a little shivering. We have to. We just have to make sure we don't go back into the trees to take a shortcut and it should be fine. Naruto's eyebrow twitched very violently. Actually, were they supposed to have this conversation about his situation within walking distance of him? Oh really? Well, they should be fine. As long as they stayed on the road. Hey. The mustachioed wizard suddenly seemed to realize that the forest exuded an ominous and evil feeling. And was it his imagination or was it all about the girl and her cat? Sigh. Naruto turned around with his head down in despondency. He passed the two chattering wizards at Cait Shelters and headed back the way they'd come running. Come on, you two. Wendy and Carla looked at each other confused. Wendy looked at the back of the walking blonde teenager. Naruto-san. What are you doing? I think I'll help you find your way home. Naruto couldn't believe he willingly fucked himself during his probation to help these two get back to where their guild was. It felt wrong to leave these two alone as they tried to find their way home. Carla silently raged and pointed at the blonde leader. We don't need your help to get back to our guild. Wendy and I are more than capable of handling this on our own. Good. Then come with me to your guild. I'm sure there is something I can talk about with your master. He yelled at the kitten over his shoulder as he continued walking without interruption. Carla was seething in her teeth as she felt her anger boil over the edge. Why would such a rude and unpleasant man join them on the return journey? Did they do something wrong? Was it a punishment? Wendy timidly started following the older wizard on the way to Cait Shelter. Carla looked at her worried. Wendy? It's okay, Carla. I don't think Naruto-san is trying to hurt us or anything like that. Let's just show her the way home and then we can have tea. Wendy tried to mediate with her friend as she hid her nervousness at following the stranger. She didn't think he was mean or that she was trying to insult them. He seemed to be a relatively nice person, and he made an effort to protect her and Carla from those wild animals before they were hurt. He even went with them to make sure they didn't have any problems. But Wendy, too, didn't feel like bringing the stranger back into her guild. She hoped that as they got closer, she would be able to ask him the real reason why he had personally taken the effort to bring them home. Carla shivered a little before letting out a long, painful breath and continuing the assault on him. Her era magic activated and a pair of fluffy white wings that sprouted from her back lifted her up. She followed her guildmate and made sure to look at him intently at the blonde. Can you stop that furball, please? I can feel the hate from here. Naruto-san. The mustachioed fairy tale wizard heard the shy voice screech behind him as the sun began to set over the horizon. I think we should start setting up camp soon. It's getting a bit dark. Naruto kept his eyes straight ahead to make sure nothing happened. If we keep moving while there's still light, we could probably reach the valley between the mountains. We're almost there. No, silly, she means we can't go any further. She's getting tired and hungry. Naruto looked over and saw that Wendy had a weary look in her eyes and her breathing was a little quicker. And Carla had lost the same wings that Felice had and instead walked on her legs. Naruto even felt their bellies growl as they watched him. He felt like an idiot. He was so focused on getting them back to his guild that he forgot that most people weren't used to constant travel. They had been moving for hours. He was surprised they hadn't expressed their weariness sooner. Naruto nodded. Right. I forgot. I'm sorry, Wendy. She shook her head with an embarrassed blush, and no, I'm sorry, Naruto-san. If I weren't so weak, we might have already made it to the guild by now. Don't blame yourself like that, Wendy. It's not your fault in any way. You know how long it took to reach Master Blue Pegasus Mansion. Even with this man's help, we couldn't have done it in a day. Carla tried to reason with her partner as she gave the blonde a slightly annoyed look. She realized that the cat was silently telling him to help. She's right, Wendy, don't blame yourself, he said as he approached a small area and started clearing the field. You and your cat find some dry leaves and twigs to keep the fire going, okay? Little Cait Mage seemed to brighten after the encouragement from Carla and Naruto-san as she nodded her head. She told her feline friend to help her look for any bait they could find in the area. When the girls went for supplies, Naruto found a fallen tree. He ran his hand over the wood to feel if it was still fit for kindling. Some parts were wet, but most of it was still dry enough to use. He stepped back an appropriate distance and gripped the sword at his side. He drew his black sword from its scabbard and chopped up the fallen tree. The firewood fell apart and the teenager started gathering enough to build a constant fire. Wendy and Carla returned to the Naruto scene, placing wooden blocks around each other with enough room for their decoy underneath. Naruto-san, we have everything we could find. Let's hope that's enough for this fire, Carla said as she placed the twigs and dry leaves she and Wendy had gathered under the twig. You have experience lighting fires, don't you? I can make a fire with some twigs and wood if I have enough time to concentrate. But I think it will probably go faster, Naruto said as he stood up and summoned a long red sword that turned whiter as he reached the door. He closed his eyes and the girls watched in amazement as the sword began to burn and create fire to surround his form. He lowered it slowly into the fire and lit it. He deactivated his sword and sat down in front of the fire. How did you do it, Naruto-san? A special little sword I found a while ago. I guess it's quite useful in situations like this. Will you two continue to watch or are you going to sit down? He quipped lightly as they realized what they were doing and took their seats in front of the dancing flames. Wendy seemed to be thinking of something as her vision kept changing from older blonde to fiery and back again. Naruto-san. Naruto looked at the girl who was nervously looking at her feet. Why do you still have that glove around your arm? She yelled, unable to voice her original question. Naruto raised his arm and swung it around to examine the scrapes more closely. It's not a glove, Wendy. It's a prosthetic arm I lost a few years ago. She looked up and seemed to regret her decision to share that little piece of information with them. Carla and Wendy looked at him with a mixture of surprise, shock and horror. Did you lose your arm? Yes. How did it completely explode? Well, more of a scam, but yeah, that's the general idea. They were both shaking in place, turning a little pale at the thought of such a thing. Carla, a little paler than before, looked at him. How did you manage to miss such a thing? Naruto looked up as he thought about what happened a few years ago. I started a fight with a growing wyvern and we went a little too far. I didn't really know how to use my magic then, so I lost a lot. It felt like so much time had passed that he had almost forgotten the details of the experience. Carla and Wendy were still a little worried about this man's missing arm, but they looked at each other and decided it was probably best to leave it alone. So, what do we do to get the food? Carla asked. Naruto looked around and got up from his seat, carefully approaching the bushes. The girls looked confused until they heard animal noises and their screams in their ears. Naruto walked out with a smile on his face and a live rabbit in his hand. Look what I got. It's not much, but it should be fine. He set it down and prepared to kill when he heard another soft protest. Naruto-san. The mustachioed fairy wizard looked up to see Wendy with rolling eyes and Carla gasping at her survival skills. Please don't kill the rabbit. Naruto looked at them with a loose jaw and trembling eyes. Would they really give up food just because the rabbit looked innocent? Wendy looked at him with tearful eyes and the cat looked away in embarrassment. They were making him look like the bad guy in this situation. Oh my gosh, even the bunny's eyes looked 3 times bigger than normal. With a reluctant sigh, he released the rabbit's legs and let it run back into the woods. He sat cross-legged and watched the 2 girls try to avoid his accusing glare. I think there was a creek a mile away. You guys don't have a problem with fish, do you? The young man was looking up at the night sky as the fire beside him continued to burn. He leaned back against the tree and made himself more comfortable as he kept watch. Wendy and Carla stood apart, using their cloak as a mat as they slept peacefully. They probably had just under another day of travel before reaching the Cait Shelter Guild. And then he would have to go back to reach Viola City and regroup with Ezra and Gigi. Shit, they'd be mad I was late again. Here's your probation. Naruto looked down and fumbled with the hilt of the sword in his lap. He had gained a great deal of power and magic, but did he really know how to use it correctly? All this experience was just reinforcing the point that Gigi was trying to convey. He was too inexperienced and irresponsible to take on the S-class. He can't even get a role without becoming an escort on the other side of this vast forest. Maybe he wasn't cut out for that kind of work. Naruto-san. Naruto shook himself out of his thoughts when he heard Wendy's tired voice. She sat wiping the sand from her eyes and yawned slightly. Are you still awake? Do you want me to watch the pitch so you can get some sleep too? Naruto smiled but shook his head. Okay Wendy. I don't think we have anything to do tonight, so I'll get some sleep in a minute. Wendy nodded slowly and looked up at the fire. Her eyes rested on the flames for a moment as she regained consciousness. Naruto-san, may I ask why did you come all the way here with us? I don't have enough money to repay your help until we get to Cait Shelter, if that's what you want, she said rather meekly. Naruto smiled and shook his head. I don't need money Wendy. That's not why I'm doing it. Then why are you doing this, Naruto-san? Naruto looked away and frowned as he thought. Honestly, I'm not too sure of myself. I didn't like the idea of letting you and the cat go off on your own. Helping you too, even when you probably didn't need to, just felt like something I had to do. He gave her an apologetic look. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm dismissing your abilities. Wendy shook her head quickly, and no, it's fine. I see what you mean. She began to fiddle nervously with the hem of her dress before showing a small smile. Then you really are a good person, Naruto-san. Naruto chuckled dryly at her innocence. I don't think that's true, Wendy. The only reason I'm here in the first place is because I've been punished for breaking my guild's rules. What did you do? She was worried that she might have beaten his guildmates or maybe even killed someone. I stole an application from our S-class board when it wasn't ready. I'm here primarily because I'm on probation. Again, that doesn't mean you're not a good person, Naruto-san. I can't do anything yet you selflessly decided to help us across the wooden sea. Really? Naruto fell silent and gave her a silent smile. If she had known all the things he had done in her early life, she probably would have run away from him screaming and crying. So he decided to accept the compliment. It was nice to receive such kind words and faith from someone so kind. I wish I was as strong as you. I've been with Cait Shelter for over 2 years, but this is my first real job. And I can't even get it right without messing up. Tears began to well up in the corners of her eyes as she began to sniff. I'll never be a good enough wizard like this. How old are you? Wendy wiped away a tear and looked at Naruto. I'm 8 years old. She was much younger than me when I started learning magic. You can't hope to get stronger when you haven't even given yourself a chance. He smiled at her and chuckled. What kind of magic do you use anyway? I use a special kind of magic that I learned from my mother. It's called Sky Dragon Slayer magic. Wait. You are a dragon slayer. Really? It's incredible. Naruto almost screamed in shock at the shocking realization. Why do you know about dragon slayers? Hee yeah. Another kid in Fairy Tail is also a dragon slayer, but he uses fire instead. Naruto couldn't believe he met another dragon slayer like Natsu. He didn't even know that there were others who could use that kind of rare magic. Actually, haven't you heard of a metal dragon slayer or something in that Phantom Lord guild? Really? Wendy asked with more enthusiasm than I'd seen her have in the short time she'd known her. Can you eat your own kind of special item too? Yes, he eats fire all the time. Wait, what exactly does a sky dragon slayer eat? Well, I can eat the sky around us to replenish my power. Isn't it just breathing? It's actually a little harder than that, she moaned softly. She lost much of her pitiful melancholy and gazed at the stars above him with passive regret. I want to go through this forest and find someone I lost. That's why I asked Master Rubel to entrust me with this task, so that I can start growing and try to follow them. But, she wrapped her arms around her knees and couldn't find the confidence to finish her statement. Naruto felt sorry for the poor girl. She was brave enough to take on a task like this on her own and kind enough to put her trust in someone she met just a few hours ago. But she must have felt so weak and useless in front of the rest of her guild. She wasn't even 10 yet, but she was already comparing her undeveloped abilities to those of the people she knew and met. That was a devastating cost that a girl took on herself to prove herself useful. It was a fine line between a person you wanted to reach and a back you could never reach. He got up and walked over to sit next to her. Who do you want to find? Wendy poked her head out of hiding a little, still feeling annoyed but knowing it was rude not to address people directly. I want to find my mother. I don't know where she went, but I know she had to be somewhere. I woke up one day and she was just gone. She left you? No. Wendy almost screamed, her eyes wet and partly red. Grandini would never have left me like this. I don't know where she went but she wouldn't have left me. She moaned sadly, as if she were trying to convince herself. More than she was convincing Naruto. Naruto sat there and looked at the young woman with her, she didn't know what to call him. I felt sorry for her, but it wasn't pity. As if she knew what she was going through. Desperately trying to better yourself to make sure you're not worthless. Oh, I knew now, empathy. Wendy's nose snorted a little and she tried to wipe away the tears again before they began to overflow. And I want to look for someone else too. A boy who saved me when I thought I was alone. He's why I joined Cait's shelter and I want to thank him for everything he's done for me. Wendy didn't make it obvious, but just mentioning that memory was enough to cheer him up a bit. I promise, Jelal, he whispered between his teeth. But even with her silent promise, Naruto heard it loud and clear. Wait, did you say Jelal? Naruto asked aloud in total disbelief. Wendy jerked back when the blonde boy got so close to her face that she finally noticed her colorful eyes wide open. Why yes? Is he like my height, shaggy blue hair? A strange tattoo around the right eye? Wendy lost all reserved concern and looked at the taller boy sitting next to her. Do you know Jelal? Naruto had an ecstatic smile on his face because he couldn't even begin to express his delight. He's my friend. I've known him for years. I really? It was Wendy's turn to be silenced but with unimpeded happiness. Do you know where he is? Have you seen? Her hope faded as Naruto shook his head, causing her to back away a bit. When you saw him, was he, okay? He didn't try to hurt you or anything, did he? Of course not. Jelal was very thoughtful and he always went out of his way to help me. She blushed a little at the memory of how he treated her like family, always making sure she ate and helping her sleep when she was having nightmares. Remembering how her guardian angel appeared in the trees and saved her from an unknown world. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the fond memories he had of his old family. That meant he'd met Jelal after they'd escaped the tower. Maybe he wasn't crazy anymore, he was still cruising the country looking for something. Whatever it was, it gave Naruto hope that his old friend was still alive. Wendy, little blue-haired Cait looked at Naruto as he gave her a big smile. I bet you'll be a great wizard when you grow up, you just need to give yourself a little more time. But if I see Jelal again, I promise I'll drag him into your guild and he'll see you again. You just have to make sure you don't have so strong, okay? Wendy began to smile and nodded. Naruto laughed and stroked her head with love, making her laugh. Come on, we have to go to bed. We will be going early tomorrow. Wendy nodded with a big renewed smile and crawled back to her makeshift bed, hugging the muttering Carla in her sleep. Naruto lay down on the ground and put his hands behind his head like a pillow. He rolled his eyes and saw the bright stars and drifting clouds floating beside the huge moon that lit up the night. He never got a chance to watch it, but it was truly a magnificent sight. He wondered if the moon in his other house shone so beautifully. A pair of blue and brown eyes stared at the bright moon above them. He just looked at her beauty as her loose hair flew in the wind. He turned to look over his shoulder from his seat on the edge of the shack's porch and saw his master asleep in his underwear and trying to escape the clutches of Master Bob's dozing embrace. Urza chuckled softly and looked up at the beautiful night sky, getting lost in its endless, still beauty. Her feet unknowingly skim the snow and leave their footprints in her shape. I don't think it's good for a girl your age to stay up late. Girls need their beauty sleep. Though I can't imagine you ever getting prettier than you already are, but you never know. The red-haired wizard turned to see her older surrogate familiar smile as he walked beside him. Plus, you might catch a cold. Sorry to wake you up, OG-san. Urza apologized when Rob sat next to her favorite little pseudo. Not at all expensive. Not all of us oldies can go as fast as those two. He nonchalantly greeted the old guildmates who were huddled even closer than before her, causing the young woman to giggle slightly when she saw him. So what's bothering you? Nothing, Rob G-san. Everything is fine. She tried to play without worries, but she could feel Rob staring at her in disbelief, one eyebrow slightly raised. Even after all this time, he still knew when she was trying to hide something from him. He looked at the field with a slight frown. Naruto is late. Still. Rob's face lit up as he realized, oh, are you arguing with Naruto-kun? Obviously not. He just. Urza clenched her fist and growled comically, he's an idiot. What did he do this time? He's such an irresponsible fool. For some reason, he thought it was a good idea to take a job in Class S before he qualified, so he could test his strength. He did what? Rob was genuinely shocked by this revelation. Exactly, he stole a guild application and went to get it himself. Lucky that moron he got home alive. What if he was killed out there? None of us could have helped him then. Urza let out a tirade as she finally released whatever pent-up anger she had at the subject. Rob was silent as he watched Urza express her thoughts on the matter, which were very lively and detailed. He explained how the system Makarov had put in place was to keep them safe and how Naruto had violated that trust for his own reasons. And that he can't just decide to run away like this because he hasn't been patient enough to wait until he comes of age. As Urza continued to moan, she almost missed it when Rob chimed in on her point. Is it wrong for me to want to get stronger? She stopped her argument and looked at Rob, who was waiting for her response. She tried to continue but could not find any more anger in that concept. No, of course he's not. It's just, I wish he didn't have to hurt himself like that. Growing up requires sacrifices like Urza Chan's, you should know that as well as he does. Obviously. But he wasn't prepared for something so dangerous. If they killed him out there. Urza struggled with the thought that something like this could happen to her friend again. I wouldn't even know he was gone. Rob watched Urza's concern when he thought about that again. He knew he had a deep fear of losing the people he cared about, it was something he could tell, and he could understand why she would feel that way. Rob chuckled a little. Urza looked at him, what's so funny? Because even after all this time, you're still the same worried little creep who used to worry about your friends. He, you are no different than that cute little boy who always enforced the rules and punished others when they misbehaved. Urza blushed a little when Rob said he was still acting like a little girl after all this time. She was a young woman, damn it. You really care about him, don't you? This time, Urza was jolted by a vibrant red hue all over her face. What? Are you crazy, Ji-san? Of course Naruto is my friend and I care about him, but she finished her words as she saw that her former guardian was still smiling. Not convinced by what she was trying to say, Urza passed out and looked at the ground with a face so flushed that it matched the color of her hair. Urza realized her feelings for Naruto some time ago. It wasn't anything groundbreaking or extraordinary, but she liked it when they were together. When they trained together, they helped each other get stronger. When commissioned they were one of the best teams in the guild. And when they were together, it was so much easier to be herself. And you don't want him to hurt himself there, do you? The girl who normally wore armor nodded. Then make sure you can stand by him and never let him put herself in danger like that, okay? I think you, more than anyone else in the world, can influence what that stupid little boy thinks. Well? Urza gave him a small but firm smile and nodded her head. They sat in comfortable silence as Urza thought about what she wanted to say. All of these feelings of loss, love, and words of encouragement prompted a question she'd been afraid to ask her whole life. Ji-san. Yes, Urza-chan. You've taken care of me all my life. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, and I want to thank you for everything you've done for me. But. Rob noticed that the normally strong and unflappable girl was having difficulty speaking. Like she had something on the tip of her tongue that she couldn't spit out. What is it? And Urza said it. The question that both she and Rob feared would come to light. Something that completely destroyed the illusion he had tried to build and protect while in the cold hell of the tower. What happened to my parents? Urza kept her composure and her stern face to make sure she didn't falter. Just like Rob, who kept a firm mask as he thought about that question. How long have you wanted to ask that? All my life. I never wanted to say it because then I would have recognized that I knew they were gone. Rob's heart sank as young Scarlet resigned herself to the idea. Worse, it was a very similar reason to why she had never told her the truth. It all started when they first took me to that tower. Rob was sitting against the wall, looking defeated at his handcuffs and shackles. Just a single moment of weakness. One misstep at the wrong time and he was locked up for the rest of his life. He had tried to save as many people as possible from being captured by this cult, but he couldn't save everyone. All around this tower, there were men, women and children crying and horrified beyond belief. Some of them had already attempted suicide by biting their tongues and slitting their wrists, giving up their lives within the walls of this hell. Rob has resigned himself to his fate in this empty cell, considering whether to try to take the easy route too. Boom. Rob felt the entire structure of the tower shake with the force of an explosion, silencing the screams and groans of the slaves around the unfinished building in the ocean. Dozens of cult members started running over the cell bars and shouting orders at each other. Run away. The slaves are trying to escape. Contain them. Kill them on sight. Don't let them go. The armory has been looted. Attack. In a blur of red, a giant made its way through groups of drones who tried to stop them as if nothing had happened. They let out a roar of rage and contempt as members of the cultic society were beaten bloody, quartered over their bodies and thrown aside. A second figure ran out of the cells, a katana in one hand and a small bundle hidden under the other arm. With surprising ease, the man raised his spears and hurled them at the oncoming cultists like a typhoon, dodging their attacks and striking back with impossible speed. He dove into the cells and cut the locks, sealing everyone inside. Run! Everyone must retreat. From where Rob could see, all the slaves huddled in front of the man with the sword. He seemed to look around confused by his cowardice to try to defend himself. What are you doing? We can't escape unless everyone works together. Get up in. Boom! A fireball hit the man's side, sending him flying through Rob's cell door. The wizards were about to press to kill the man when a woman wearing the same rags as the other slaves dived from another floor and kicked them so hard that Rob could hear the crunch of her thorns. He turned around in shock. Kazuya. Wait, stop. The wounded man yelled at the woman who stopped on the spot. He coughed and got back on his knees. Don't worry about me, Erica, we're fine. Keep it up. The dark red-haired woman nodded hesitantly before running away to continue the fight, gripping the knight's sword even tighter. Rob helped the man to his knees, holding the bundle in his arms out of harm's way. "Are you okay, young man? You have to stop before they kill you." The black-haired man gasped as his body was partially burned from the surprise attack. "OG-san, gasp asterisk, P please help me." Rob tried to hold him down. "Sure, I keep her safe." She lowered her arm and revealed to Rob what he was carrying and protecting for his safety. Rob looked at the unconscious little girl resting her head on the man's bicep. Just like the woman who was fighting the war alone outside, she had the same kind of bright red, shoulder-length hair. She was so small, probably no bigger than a small child. The man reached out and placed her in Rob's arms for safety. Rob was speechless as he looked between the innocent girl who didn't have a single mark on her and the swordsman whose entire body was covered in wounds from protecting her. "Her name is Urza, and I need you to keep her safe until we can get everyone out. Can you do that for me?" Rob was looking between the man and the girl resting in his arms. I can't take your daughter. What if I can't be trusted?" "You can't. You are different," the man coughed as he began to rise on shaky legs. "No one else would have helped me if he had thrown and hit me like that. And you have strong eyes, which can withstand this kind of fight and much more." As if renewed by his determination, Kazuya stood up and held his position. He started forward, ignoring the wounded state of his body, and grabbed his katana. "Keep her safe until we can free everyone and find you again. If we don't, I don't want her to be captured with us." Just as the man was about to leave, he turned away and gave Rob a warm, trusting smile. "I'm sorry about that, OG-san." Rob cradled the girl in her arms as the wizarding couple declared war on the entire cult group. He wanted to charge in and help them, but he knew he had a much greater task on his hands to keep this child safe. After what seemed like hours, the noises finally died down and the fight was over. Cult members were beaten but still wary, silencing anyone in their cells who had started misbehaving. Rob hugged the sleeping girl and told himself they would come back for her. That they had escaped and were returning for help. It was a lie he had chosen to believe. That this was a new task he had to complete until they returned for his precious daughter. It was all he could do to stick together as his old eyes blurred and tears streamed down the man's cheeks. "I kept that promise as long as I could." Rob turned to the silent girl sitting next to him. "I shouldn't have lied to you for so long. You were stronger than me. I am sorry. I'm so sorry I kept this from you for so long." Urza didn't respond immediately after hearing the story of her parents' last fight in the Tower of Heaven. She remembered hearing rumors of a couple of slaves mutinying and nearly destroying the tower years before she and everyone escaped. "Urza-chan?" Rob asked in an almost desperate plea to hear her voice. Urza wiped her eyes and sniffed her nose to keep it from breaking. "It's okay, Rob-ji-san. You've always cared about me and kept me safe, so I know you were doing what you thought was right." They both fell completely silent as they looked up at the big moon, letting the conversation linger there for a moment. "And yet I know," Rob said again in a strong voice. "Even if I gave my whole body and soul to protect you, even if I loved you for the rest of my life, it would be only a fraction of how much your parents love you, Urza." Urza was silent as Rob finished baring her soul and telling her the truth about her parentage. He sniffed lightly. Before looking at Rob with wide, teary eyes and shaking shoulders, he wrapped his arms around her and whispered that everything would be okay as she sobbed silently into his chest like she had so many years ago. "What? This? Why is this happening?" Naruto yelled as he ran through the forest like a bat out of hell, Carla carrying Wendy, and they both screamed at the top of their lungs. Behind the trio were several dozen packs of wolves, chimpanzees, and assorted wildlife that stalked the small group in search of blood. The animals that cornered the Cait duo yesterday were leading the charge with their respective families after their attacks. "What now, Mr. Fairy Wizard? Any bright ideas you'd like to share?" Carla yelled sarcastically as Wendy howled and lifted her feet from a possible wolf bite. "Working on it." Naruto rounded a corner and found himself blocked by another group of bearing animals. He started walking away with Wendy and Carla right behind him, and Naruto-san. Wendy moaned in terror. "Okay, Wendy. I can take care of the bugs, you and the cat just have a little more space." Before Carla could argue, a thud echoed through the area and birds began flying out of the trees. The pursuing animals began to spread out, leaving a wide gap in front of the small group. From the towering trees appeared a wyvern with dark green scales. She threw her head back and let out a roar that nearly burst their eardrums. Naruto looked at the grown giant with a gasp of concern. "All right. It might be a little more difficult than I thought." She stifled a small laugh. "Where the hell did that thing come from?" The white cat squealed as her female protege froze in place of the beast. "I think we just found the king of the forest, and he's come to deal with us." Naruto slowly took the handle of his kokuryu. The wyvern roared and swung its huge tail, aiming to crush Naruto and the girls. He leapt to her feet and drew her black sword, shielding himself from him as his scales grated against each other. The tail swung again and Naruto landed on the ground, summoning the same red sword he had used the night before to light the fire. The flaming dragon unit. A wide expanse of fire surrounded the flaming sword as it reached down to strike the beast's claws. The wyvern simply flew back and pursued the sweeping sword attack, swinging downward to tear the boy apart with his large purple claws. Naruto jumped back and dodged the weight of the attack, but felt the tip of one of his claws cut into his chest. He rolled back and leapt away as the spiky tail tried to come back at him. And soon after, the beast blew a concentrated gust of wind at him, leaving a crater in the ground where Naruto leapt off. He didn't have a moment to respond as the crazed monster chased him deep into the forest. Where is that idiot going? Naruto-san. Wendy tried to call out to him, but was blocked by the entire array of creatures who were paying all their attention to her and Carla. The flying cat reacts by finding an open path and flying it together with Wendy, trying to put as much distance between them and the carnivores as possible. No matter how far he flew, they stayed on his tail like a bear to honey, making their way through the sea of trees. After a dignified attempt to escape, Wendy felt them losing height and getting closer to the ground. Carla. The young dragon slayer was concerned when she noticed how beads of sweat fell down Carla's face and she was panting sporadically. Oh, alright Wendy, I promise you that, you. Carla passed out from exhaustion during the flight, knocking Wendy to the ground and rolling onto the grass. She moaned but pushed herself to run to Carla's side. She gently picked up her best friend and cradled her close as she tried to escape on foot. But out of the corner of her eye she saw the animals flanking her hips and walked out of her. She panicked and tried to find a place to escape, but she couldn't because she was blocked on all sides. Wendy backed up to a tree, terrified of being cornered and alone again like that, holding Carla as close as she could. As the wolves snarled and closed on her, she couldn't help but wish Naruto-san would come back and save them again. She couldn't do it alone. She wasn't strong enough. I was weak. I bet you'll be a great wizard when you grow up, you just need to give yourself a little more time. Wendy heard Naruto-san's voice ringing in her ears and cheered her up again. I promise you, Wendy, I'll be with you forever. Jalal's promised to stay with her and keep her strong. Grandini, I can't make a dragon's roar like you. Yours is so beautiful and powerful, but mine is. The girl said to the huge scaly creature with fur covering its body. Wendy, do you know who you are? Said the dragon in a sweet and affectionate tone to her daughter. Wendy looked at her foster mother with a bemused slant. I'm Wendy, right? She said as if she wasn't sure that was her answer. Grandini nodded, exactly. You are Wendy Marvell. You are my daughter and the dragon slayer of heaven. And I promise you that one day your roar will be so powerful that you will be even stronger than me. And I know, Wendy. Because I believe in you. Wendy pushed herself off the tree and looked at the animals around her with a stern look. All the animals stopped stalking her forward and froze at the sudden power she gained in her eyes. For now, just for a moment, she has let go of all her insecurities and fears. She took a deep breath to calm herself as the wind began to gather around her mouth. He clung even tighter to Carla, waking her up enough to see her keeper start watching the animals. The wolves began to recoil in fear of her as a strange presence began to form around the girl. The vortex began to disappear. Sky Dragon. Roar. A mighty typhoon roared from its mouth. The huge whirlwind swept away the animals and split the trees. After the big attack faded, he showed a big trench formed by the force of his attack on him. Around the area of effect, carnivorous animals lay unconscious with spiral eyes. Carla looked at Wendy with a tired but proud expression. Well done, Wendy, she gasped as Wendy inhaled rapidly, looking at her work in surprise. She looked at Carla and felt a proud smile form on him. Then he remembered what was happening before his breath attack. Ah, Naruto-san. Where did he go? Wendy looked around with big white eyes as they lost sight of her blonde friend as they argued. He ran in the direction where he had heard a primitive roaring echo, like that of a beast. Naruto was trying to cut the lizard beast's scales, but it appeared to be a tough and agile body. Dragon sword strikes also didn't work because the beast never stayed in one position long enough to deal enough damage. And she didn't know why, but her chest was hot and it hurt to breathe. The wyvern continued to unleash stronger gusts of wind towards Naruto as it forced him out of the tree cover and onto the edge of a cliff overlooking another section of the forest. Naruto looked down at the lower level of the sea of wood and found himself trapped between the beast and the fall. The wyvern took a deep breath and unleashed another blast of magic focused on the prone blonde. Naruto turned and blocked the mighty storm with his red and black swords as the cloud of smoke blinded him. He growled between his teeth and looked at the beast that had perched on its hind legs in front of him, preparing to attack the wizard again while he was still unprotected. Was that what they called déjà vu? Getting stuck in an unfavorable situation with a wild wyvern looking at him like he was tasty food, it seemed like another bad memory was unfolding. The mustachioed teenager was cursing his luck at the time. He looked at the red blade he'd been trying to train with for the past few weeks. These things still had to use too much magical power just to work properly. Natsu also said that it was like being next to the fires of Igneel again. A pure, undiluted flame that, according to the young dragon slayer, is matched only by the embers of the dragon's original power. So they still had a long way to go before they could harness the full potential of swords. When he showed them to all guild members, everyone was amazed and interested in how they worked. A group of them took turns practicing on them and seeing what they were like. And most of his friends had exactly the same difficulty using them as he did. Except for the elder wizards of the guild. In fact, they made swords use the same amount of power and for longer than the younger generation. Macau explained to them that they weren't using their magic power efficiently, putting too much bulk on the item and not getting equivalent power. He then explained how to properly gauge the magical potential. You have to make your magic stronger and last longer, but that's when the kids started falling asleep. And also, little Romeo was crying after he pooped and this required the veteran wizard's immediate attention. No offense to Macau, but he really wasn't interesting enough to hold their attention long enough to lecture them. But later Gigi told them something that caught their attention. You guys should stop worrying about that stuff for now guys, you'll do better when you start graduating without diapers. As he drank from his cup. You should know that no matter how much power you end up with, you should think a little more about your fights and experiences. Power does not equal strength, and strength does not equal victory. Naruto knelt in a deeper position, swapping his fiery red sword for a much darker model. A large black longsword appeared in his hand as he gripped it with both hands. He began to emit a black aura that grew thicker the longer he held the sword. He growled and swung his sword as the wyvern spat another gust of wind. Black Shroud. The shadow magic sheet collided with the storm force breath attack and both began to vanish. And as the black coating evaporated into dust, Naruto wielded another almost holographic-looking long sword. Sunflare. An intense incandescent light temporarily blinded the scaly creature as he roared in pain. His vision began to blur again and he concentrated long enough to notice that something was pushing his wings up. The wyvern saw that the blonde boy held another blue sword with a pointed design on the blade as he swung it above his head in a spiral formation. Around it was a large vortex that slipped under the lizard's wings and was lifting it off the ground. The black-cloaked boy bellowed in a mighty voice and swung his sword at the beast, causing the small whirlwind that hurled the wyvern off the cliff. The creature fell several feet off the base of the cliff before regaining its balance in midair. She flapped her wings and began to gain altitude before she saw the boy at the cliff's edge, looking down at the creature with a broad grin and another sword slung over his shoulder. He raised the curved greatsword above her head and smashed it against the cliff, causing hundreds of cracks to form along the entire body of the cliff. The cliff collapsed into dozens of huge boulders as the wyvern watched the landslide with large white eyes. He was buried under rubble and fell 100 feet into the lowest level of the forest. Naruto looked towards the new side of the cliff and saw the unconscious creature with X eyes. He whistled in surprise as he looked past the Sword of Earth. You're tough, aren't you? We have to see how you fare against someone like Jura. Will be. He fell to her knees and tried to keep her sight from wandering beyond what he already did. Naruto groaned and instinctively raised a hand to the scratch the wyvern had made on his chest. What the hell? Did it just touch me? He discarded the Sword of Earth and summoned the Sword of Heaven in its place. He brought the sword to his chest and tried to dress the wound before it got worse. But he noticed that while the pain and bruising from his other wounds had begun to fade, the wyvern's burning sensation had barely subsided. TCH, damn it. What the hell is going on? Naruto-san. Wendy came running towards the teenager, looking a little tired and with an unconscious Carla in her arms. Thank goodness you're okay. I'm so glad you escaped the wyvern before it got to you. How did you do that? Naruto simply pointed to the edge of the cliff and said nothing more. Wendy looked at him in confusion before carefully approaching the edge of the rock formation and peering cautiously over the side, her jaw hanging open at the sight of the large, unconscious beast resting under a huge pile of rocks and rubble. She wanted to ask him how he'd done it, but she decided it might not be the best time. She noticed that Naruto was a little uncomfortable and walked over to his side. Are you okay? Yes, I should be fine, but, is there something wrong? He said as he clutched the wound on his chest. Wendy awkwardly delivered an unconscious Carla into Naruto's arms as she looked at the sleeping form of the frowning kitten. She is fine? She is very tired of running away from wolves. Wendy was focusing all of her attention on the visible part of the wound on his chest. Oh, damned wolves. I forgot. Hey, what happened? Did you miss them? Come here? Naruto-san, shut up. I'm looking at your wound. Naruto blinked only at his sudden and forceful demeanor as he was checking his wound. He closed his mouth with a loud applause. Wendy gasped and looked at him with concern. You have been poisoned. Oh, that explained it. Yes, he remembered that Rob G-chan said something about how animals will evolve differently in separate environments. Blizzardvern in the mountains had hard white scales to help them blend in with their surroundings. It made sense that a jungle-dwelling wyvern would have a defensive mechanism to fend off other predators. Wait? Did that mean the sky sword didn't work against poison? Did he know that swords only had a fraction of the dragon's actual power, but the sword only healed physical wounds? How disgusting. Shit. Wendy, help me up. We need to find an antidote or something before it starts spreading. She interrupted his order as the young woman put her hands next to the wound on her chest and closed her eyes. Naruto noticed a faint green light begin to form around her hands as the pain from the poison began to steadily fade. He watched in amazement as the wound began to close and disappear from view. Wendy finished her spell and dropped her hands, sighing with relief that she was able to help her friend before it was too late. Naruto grabbed his shirt and opened the cut to look at his chest. The wound was completely gone. Not even a scratch scar was left. Wendy, this is amazing. I can't believe you can do this. Wendy forced herself to nod and turned in a specific direction at her side. See, come on Naruto-san. Our guild is. Wendy nearly fainted but Naruto caught her before she landed on his face. Hey. Are you okay, Wendy? What's wrong? Naruto asked concerned as he tried to treat the two Cait shelter girls carefully. Wendy forced her eyes open long enough to talk to him. Sorry Naruto-san. I'm really tired of using my magic for so long. I think I need a moment too. Her eyes fluttered a bit and she yawned. Before he passed out from exhaustion, He was still young and his magic hadn't developed very well yet, so an extremely powerful breath attack and stopping the poison in Naruto's body was all that ended. Naruto sighed and looked between Wendy and Carla. He looked in the direction the little dragon slayer was pointing and smiled, happy that now she seemed more confident than the night before. Wendy tried to open her eyes again, but they felt stuck together. She felt like she was floating and occasionally she could feel a slight bump propelling her. He tried to lift his head and saw Naruto-san's back towards the setting sun. Naruto-san? Naruto blinked and slowly turned his head, making sure the kitten perched on his head wasn't pushed around. Hey, rise and shine sleepyhead. I think we're almost at your guild. I saw it over the last hill we passed. We should be there soon. Wendy didn't seem entirely aware of what was happening as she mumbled incoherently into her back, stroking her so she could continue her nap. Something about the blonde's presence helped calm her concern and allowed her to relax. He was really warm. Like how she felt when he was with Jelal or Grandini. Calming, Naruto-san. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the sleeping girl's face as he tried to open his eyes. You are a really good person. Thank you. She finished as she finally closed her eyes and surrendered to sleep. Naruto kept going with a smile on his face. He really didn't mind if Gigi dangled him by the ears for being late. This whole experience was worth it. Eventually Naruto made his way up the hill and reached the entire guild site where the two girls came from. The whole cat thing seemed to make sense now that he saw that his base of operations was basically a cat's head sticking out of the ground. Surrounding the main compound were smaller, more intricate log cabins covering the entire stone floor area. And there seemed to be a large crowd of people in the main square shouting something. Okay, let's go to that forest and get the girls back. Fuck the monsters. One of the men in the huge group of people clapped while holding a stick over his head. One of the women was worriedly distraught, wiping a tear from her eye. We shouldn't have let them go alone like that. We should have known better. Oh no, she cried into her hands as some of Cait's other members tried to reassure her. Enough. All of you. At the head of the group was a short man with a large fluffy white beard. He had a strange tattoo on his forehead and a strange helmet that covered his scalp. We'll never solve any of our problems if we stay here and regret it. So you'll just sit here worrying until you return, or we'll brave the storm and attack there. Yes. It doesn't matter what we face in that forest, as long as Wendy and Carla are there, we will face any danger. Yes. We will defeat any enemy. Yes. Excuse me? 1 second, young man. Rubol chimed in on the stranger who appeared behind him before slipping effortlessly into enthusiasm. So let's get the hell out of here, make our way through the woods and show those monsters why they should not try to hurt our family. Hell yes. The entire guild was excited and cheering as Rubol turned to address the young blonde who had somehow made his way so deep into the wooden sea. I'm sorry young man, what did you need? I was wondering if these two were yours. Upon second inspection, the old man noticed that he had a familiar white cat sleeping on his head and that the youngest member of the guild was being carried while she rested her eyes. Wendy. Carla. The guild surrounded the young man and took the two young men in charge of taking care of the blonde. They carried them carefully, to make sure they weren't pushed too far. Are they injured? What happened to them? Naruto asked everyone to calm down with a wave of his hands. They're fine, they're fine. They're just dead tired from traveling all day and fighting off some hungry animals. All of Cait's shelter was staring at him with unreadable expressions. Before one of them yelled at the others, why the hell were they fighting? Because they look like easy prey in the middle of the forest. Naruto replied rather flatly, forcing the entire guild to mechanically turn their heads to look at the girl and the cat who were dozing as if there was no cure in the world. Okay. I could see how it would happen. But in reality those two were quite surprising. They beat a lot of predators by themselves like nothing. Naruto didn't really know what happened because it wasn't explained to him, but he didn't mind stretching the details as long as the overall result was true. They kicked, punched, flew at them and beat them ruthless. Naruto nodded his head smiling with his arms crossed. You guys have some really cool guys in your guild. Rubol smiled and looked at the two girls who had done their best to deliver the package he had asked for. He looked up at his surrounding guild. Okay everyone, that's enough. Just put them in their beds and let them rest. They've had a long day. When the guild members began to dwindle, only Master Cait and the blonde boy were left standing in the plaza. The short man started walking and motioned for the boy to follow him. So, young man, are you one of Master Bob's members? Hey. No, I'm in Fairy Tail, old chap. Naruto joined the conversation as he looked at Cait Shelter's exotic guild. Master Bob just asked me to come here and get the information as part of the request. Oh, so you were from Makarov's family? Hee, I might have suspected it. Rubol came to a dirt road with a stable of horses tied to the rafters. I want to thank you for helping those two when they needed it. I dared not to think what could have happened to them if they had been hurt. The old man clenched his fist until his knuckles turned white and he began to tremble slightly. I wanted them to finally start growing the way they wanted. I thought that if I let them accept this request, it would be their first step towards becoming full-fledged adults. But I was foolish to think they would not experience such danger. I'm so stupid. He seemed to reproach himself for his decision. Naruto tried to calm him down. It's okay. They were really able to hold their own there. I bet they'll be great when they grow up, just give them some time. Rubol considered what he had said and seemed to calm down. I'm sorry, you're right. It's just that sometimes we just can't help it. Even when you have complete trust in someone, you can't help but worry about them when they're gone. It's just part of being a family and taking care of each other. Naruto looked at the shorter man in mild shock at his earnest expression. Actually, he was right. Even he felt a little worried when some of the others went on dangerous missions, like Urza or Natsu and Gray. He knew full well they were capable of taking care of themselves, but he was still worried if they got hurt. Did everyone feel this way when someone they cared about? Oh. Oh shit. God, I'm an idiot. Rubel grabbed the leash of one of his horses and handed it to the young man. This little one has been trained to follow the trail to the mountains and come home afterward. You are probably quite tired, so leave it all to him. When it stops, simply follow the trail around the mountains and you'll reach Viola by the end of tomorrow. Naruto wanted to protest, but it was true. He felt like he might fall asleep at any minute. He smiled slightly and nodded at the grinning old man. He got on the horse and whipped the rope, causing it to start walking down the trail as Cait Shelter's teacher said goodbye. Naruto could have spent another full night looking at the stars and thinking more about what he experienced during this trip. But he gave up, simply resting his head against the horse's fluffy mane. 2 days. You're 2 days late. What's wrong with you? Makarov yelled angrily as he stamped his feet, attracting the attention of many people around the town square. I don't want to explain Gigi again. If the idea of me helping innocent children is too much for you to handle, forget it. Get angry. The blonde teenager yelled with equal ferocity, as he stood up in his master's face. No problem, kid. I'm absolutely dead. Naruto and Makarov huffed and crossed their arms looking at each other. The scarlet-haired girl behind them was shaking her head in disappointment. Makarov sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. At least your fucking ass gave Bobby that information intact. What the hell was that thing for? Just something Bobby has been researching magical levels in the Wooden Sea. Nothing to worry about. The little ferrymaster grumbled as he headed back to the train station to buy his next ticket. Viola did not have a direct train to Magnolia, so they had to make a stop in this small town before returning to home. As Naruto watched the old man grunt to pay for his transportation, he looked up to see Urza looking around the city with interest. He inhaled and exhaled deeply to calm down before walking over to the position of the armored girl. Urza was looking at the city's shops with great interest in buying something new. He didn't like to advertise it, but he did like shopping for current fashion and looking for new armor. She was, after all, a growing girl. Urza? Naruto's voice broke her concentration as she looked back to see him standing there with a troubled expression. Huh? Naruto, what is? Excuse me. Yelled Naruto as he cocked his head, catching the red off guard at his sudden exclamation. Iha? Urza answered weakly with her eyes rolling back in surprise. I'm sorry I took the S-class quest without permission and I didn't even tell you. Urza blinked before trying to stop him by waving her arms. Naruto, honestly, it's okay now. You do not. Not well. Urza stopped short when her blonde friend interrupted her with a stern reply. I can't selfishly go out and steal a mission like that. I want to gain strength but I shouldn't. I don't have to resort to stealing just to get what I want. The regret in his eyes faded and he stood up to look at her. You were worried I might die when I didn't come back, weren't you? Urza only stared at him for a moment. Moment before nodding. Look, what's the point of making me stronger if I make you and everyone else worry about me hurting myself? I keep making you worry because I can't control myself with stuff like that. He gave her a confident smile and closed his fist firmly in front of her chest. I promise Urza, I won't do anything like this to make you worry again. I swear. Urza stood there silent as she watched Naruto take the blame for what he had done. Was she so busy lately that he thought she was punishing him? Urza thought about what she had promised and what she could do. She knew him better than anyone. She was his best friend since he could remember and she was hers. Whenever Naruto had a problem, Urza had a duty to help solve it any way she could. That was how they worked. Always helping each other, sometimes without them even knowing they were doing it. Urza chuckled softly and looked at him with a gentle smile on her face. No, you will not. Naruto was completely taken aback by that answer. Evidenced by his wide eyes, loose jaw and weak choke on his, huh? You will never stop doing these things, Naruto. It's just your way of being. Whenever there was something you felt like you needed to do, someone you thought needed help, you jumped on them without a second thought. It's just your way of being. And you can't change it, no matter what you try. Naruto felt his cheeks turn red with embarrassment at how his friend analyzed him so easily with a cheeky smile on his face. For if but. Urza raised her gauntlet-clad hand and stopped his rebuttal at that spot. So this is what you're going to do from now on. Make sure you always come back to me, okay? Urza put her hands on her hips and looked at him with unflinching determination. Seeing that he was confused by her statement, she decided to amplify it with a gentle expression. Every time you come back from a mission or a request, I want you to come back to see me. I want to see for myself that you are okay. Because I know I can't help you be the kind of person who strives to make things better, Naruto. But at least I want to be the person you can count on when things get too difficult, Urza concluded with the widest honest smile. Naruto didn't know why, but his face burned even more than before. He couldn't say anything as he looked at Urza in amazement. Swallowing, he thought about what it meant to her to say that and to care so much about him. He felt all his concern dissolve and gave the girl a similar honest smile. Okay Urza. I promise I will always come back to you. She nodded. Fine. A light tap of boots came up from behind the two teenagers. Oh, I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Smiling. I'm off for a few minutes and things start to heat up. Ooh, kids these days. Both boys felt their faces flush again at their eldest's taunts. Naruto growled and grabbed the little man by the cheeks. Shut up Gigi, or LL go tell Ba-chan about that secret stash of magazines you've been hiding in the back room of the guild. Makarov's face was completely drained of blood from the threat made by his pseudo-son. Why do you think poor Lyuzuka is interested in this? Naruto smiled defiantly. The better question is, are you really willing to take that risk? The third fairy tale master was happily jumping, trying to forget the previous threat he had just received from his guild member. Okay, you two, the train won't be here for another 1 hour. Urza nodded happily as Naruto just grunted a reluctant answer. Makarov hid in a risque party club down an alley, leaving the two magical wizards alone. Come on, Urza. Do we really have to go shopping? I don't like spending all my time looking for things we can't even buy. Naruto wasn't the most excitable when it came to shopping. He had enough clothes, wasn't the biggest reader, and basically always went out to eat. What else was I supposed to go looking for? Stop complaining, Naruto. We have nothing better to do before the train returns. Besides, what else would you have done to pass the time? Sit on your bum and watch the paint dry. Urza pointedly replied as the plaza space filled with consumers and shoppers swarming like fish. It almost seems exciting right now, Naruto said in a bored tone and slumped onto his body. Urza simply shook her head and ran past him, leaving him to look around and wonder why so many people spend all their time looking at these things. Naruto, come on. I think we found ourselves in a place where we can eat. He perked up with that little statement. Did you find a ramen place? No, I found a candy store. Hurry up before I drain the place. Naruto deflated at the mention of no ramen shops as he decided to follow her to the candy store. That was one of the things he would never think of Urza. She was very sweet. Cakes, sweets, she ate them all. In fact, I couldn't wait to see her buy everything in the store and Naruto froze in place, a cold shiver running down his spine as he felt a strange presence pass around him. Naruto turned around, desperately looking for anyone emanating the strange but familiar signature he had heard in the area. His eyes darted from person to person searching for the stranger, ignoring even the sounds of Urza calling his name to hurry up. Through the gaps between the moving people, almost in slow motion, Naruto saw the back of the person he had noticed. She was of fairly average height, being taller than he but about the same build as most of the older women he knew. She had long, wavy blonde hair that fell to the slit down her back and she was clutching a brown paper bag as she scurried through the crowd. Naruto panicked, clenching his fists and running preemptively before she could yell at him. Hey, lady, stop. Among the dozens of people around them, the woman almost immediately realized that they were calling her, and immediately ran to the exit of the city in which they were. Naruto wasted no time as he pushed his way through the crowd and rushed after the woman with all the power and speed he could muster. Urza watched him run off with a strange panic on his face. Naruto? Before running off to catch his friend, she ran to the dirty play club to ask her teacher for help. Naruto chased the female leader out of town, across the streets and found himself running after her into the forest. He ensured not to lose his trail for a second, since he used part of his magic of armor to strengthen his legs and give him a speed impulse. But also with the outbreak in acceleration, the woman seemed to keep the distance very easily. In fact, was he moving further away? She looked over her shoulder to see the blonde boy with a mustache on his cheeks that she was still trying to hit him. He gripped the supply bag tightly before disappearing from Naruto's sight like a faded image. Naruto stopped and looked around the trees for the woman who had disappeared so easily. Where are you? Please come out. I need to talk to you, he yelled as he gasped from the chase he had just given. He climbed the trees to get an eagle-eye view of the area of the forest they had come across. He looked for another person, but found nothing. Before hearing the same kind of signature he heard from the woman he was pursuing. It was large but it hid something he could distinguish from the rest of the world because it was not of the nature of Earth. Chakra. As soon as the energy appeared, it disappeared from his senses. Naruto jumped down from the trees and began to approach the energy he had felt carefully. Naruto, he heard Urza call his name as she ran towards him followed by Makarov. What are you doing? Why were you chasing a woman out of town? What the hell are you thinking, brat? We've got enough trouble without being known as the guild that goes after innocent women. Makarov yelled at his young blonde companion before noticing the concern on his face. Naruto, what's wrong? Naruto wasn't even looking at them as he kept an eye on the area surrounding the trio. Finally he recognized their appearance and looked at them confused. Chakra. I sensed chakra. That woman has it, but I could tell she had it. Urza and Makarov felt their eyes widen in shock. How can anyone have chakra here? Aren't you the only one who can still use it? Urza asked looking in the direction Naruto was looking for a second ago. That's what I thought. People aren't born with the ability to use chakra in this world, so how the hell does anyone have it here? Naruto said as he continued walking in the same direction as before. I have to find her. Naruto, wait. The two young guild members looked down to see their master with a far more stern and focused expression on his face than they had ever seen him wear before. You won't find her by yourself, it's very difficult. You and Urza go left and I'll look right. They looked at each other before looking back at the shorter man and nodding. We're not trying to start anything with her, okay? If we find her, we'll just ask her a few questions. Avoid conflict as much as possible. The two nodded in agreement before following Naruto's instincts and running in the last direction they sensed the chakra's signature. Sorry, Oji-sama, I led them straight towards us like this. That boy must have been a wizard or something because he followed me until I reached the forest. The woman's voice apologized as she dropped the purse she was carrying in front of a man sitting in a makeshift chair. Okay Mahi, it was my mistake for not putting the seals fast enough after we came here. The wrinkled old man seemed to become severely depressed in an instant when the young woman tried to tell him he was fine. As soon as her melancholy gained, he lost it and looked at her. How did they know you were different? She shook her head, I don't know. I didn't stay long enough to take a look, I just ran as fast as I could when he screamed. The old man stamped his foot before glancing at the much younger woman. You have to get them out of here. We can't risk other people finding out about us. I'll take care of everything here, don't worry. Got it, she replied gratefully before standing up and walking back to where she had come from. Mahi, she turned away when she heard her grandfather say her nickname. Please don't kill them. None of them, she seemed to plead almost sadly. The blonde woman's eyes softened at her confusion and she nodded before disappearing from sight again. Naruto and Urza were making their way through the trees, trying to find the woman Naruto thought could use chakra. Urza walked up beside the focused blonde. Are you really sure this woman can use chakra? How can you tell? Because she looked different. She hid it very well and would not have been noticed by people unfamiliar with chakra, but I did notice. I'll never forget how it feels to feel other people's chakra, Naruto whispered softly. He couldn't forget. He wasn't allowed to forget how the chakra felt. The memories of hundreds of shinobi in Kunoichi throwing all their reserves into killing him before he forced his chakra-covered hand through his chest were still with him. The faint memory of Kurama's power flowing through his body was still faint on his skin. If it was anything, he was a master at recognizing those who could use their inner power that way. I didn't know how to use it, but damn it, I'd never forget it. Urza's face twisted in concern when she saw Naruto's cold expression. She knew everything she'd done in the past, and remembering it was something she didn't really like. What will you do when we find her? Naruto looked down and frowned as he thought about what would happen if he found her. I don't know, I'll ask her how she got here. Or how did she learn to use her chakra? OR. He halted his march and looked down as his fist trembled. I want to know if she's here to hurt anyone. That was the real reason he was so desperate to follow her. More than most people, he understood how driven and ruthless a ninja could get into dire straits. And if she wanted to hurt people, he felt it was his responsibility to stop her. Urza was worried and she wanted to help Naruto with his problem. But out of the corner of her eye, she noticed a point of light reflecting off her eyesight and it was getting brighter and brighter. Move Naruto. She knocked him to the ground before he could react to her warning, the ground beside them exploding in a cloud of smoke. The two fairies rolled to the ground before separating, Urza summoning a sword and Naruto clutching the blade to his side. Their eyes were glued to the dust screen as a figure began to rise in the center. The blonde woman emerged from the cloud, a fierce expression on her face and not a speck of dust on her clothes. She had a slim but firm body, her large breasts hidden by her black coat and blouse. He walked over to the younger duo who were wearing boots and blue jeans. Her emerald green eyes didn't waver as she looked at the young couple. Go away. Now, he said, his voice indicating there was no room for discussion. Elsa tried to mediate the situation. Please stand back. We just want to talk to. This is not a request. Leave now or I will force you to leave. Last warning. He said harshly as his fists clenched at his sides. Naruto answered his request by standing up and drawing his black sword. We're not leaving. Not yet. The taller woman narrowed her eyes and crouched down to fight, one hand aimed at the wizards while the other was at her side. Well. Naruto thought he had the advantage of knowing how his enemy fought. He still remembered that when a shinobi was about to attack, he would create hand seals to collect his own chakra and shape it properly until he could transform it into an attack. He figured that as long as he kept his eyes on the woman's hands, he'd be able to tell when she was about to attack and act accordingly. He didn't expect his hand to start wrapping itself in one of the brightest lights he'd ever seen before. Instinctively darting sideways, the two fairies watched as the woman suddenly appeared to where they were and struck the tree behind them. They were also able to see how the entire body of the tree was vaporized almost instantly. Naruto was looking at the motionless back of the powerful woman in front of him. He analyzed the situation as best he could. What the hell is going on? That wasn't chakra, that was magic. How is it possible? Just so you know, the woman snapped as she turned and stared at the blonde man behind her. You should have left when you had the chance. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening to this video. If you did enjoy this part of the story, like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more crossover fiction, and have a great day.